Imagine this. You wake up with a fever. By nightfall, your body is covered in strange black swellings. Within days, you're dead. And so are half the people you know. This wasn't a war. It wasn't a famine. It was something far more terrifying. The Black Death, the deadliest plague in history that ripped through Europe in the 14th century, killing tens of millions and leaving a world that would never be the same again. Before it all began, Europe seemed busy and alive. Populations had grown, cities were crowded, and trade connected people from England all the way to Asia. But beneath the surface, things weren't so great. Food shortages, war, and poor sanitation left people vulnerable. Meanwhile, far to the east, a killer was on the move. Carried by fleas hiding on rats, the plague traveled along trade routes like an invisible passenger. By the time it reached the Black Sea and boarded merchant ships, it was only a matter of time before Europe felt its wrath. In October of 1347, a dozen ships sailed into the Sicilian port of Messina. Locals expected grain, spices, maybe even news from the east. But what they got instead was horror. The crews were nearly dead. Their bodies were covered in dark swelling and their skin blackened. The town tried to send the ships away, but it was pointless. The plague had already landed. From Messina, it spread like wildfire. Venice, Genoa, Florence, France, Spain, and soon even England. Once it arrived, there was no stopping it. Across Europe, the disease cut people down at terrifying speed. One day you were fine. The next you were coughing blood and collapsing in the street. London saw death carts rumbling through the city, piled high with bodies. In Paris, funerals became a constant drumbeat. In Florence, entire neighborhoods were abandoned. People scrambled for answers. Some marched through towns whipping themselves, hoping God would forgive humanity's sins. Others lashed out at Jewish communities, accusing them of poisoning wells. Fear turned neighbor against neighbor. Doctors were completely helpless. Priests were dying right alongside the people they tried to help. Families were torn apart as parents abandoned sick children in desperation. Europe was unraveling. Between 1348 and 1350, things reached their darkest point. In some cities, hundreds were dying every single day. Entire villages simply disappeared from the map. Artists captured the despair in haunting images. Skeletons leading kings, nobles and peasants alike in the so-called dance of death. Because in the plague years, status meant nothing, rich or poor, powerful or powerless. Death came for all. By the time it was over, somewhere between 25 and 50 million people were gone. Half of Europe's population vanished. But as horrifying as it was, the Black Death also forced change. With so many dead, workers were in short supply. Suddenly, peasants and laborers had leverage. Feudal lords couldn't ignore their demands anymore. The old order started to crumble. The church, which had always been the bedrock of medieval life, lost some of its authority. People questioned why God would allow such suffering and why the church had no answers. That doubt would only grow in the centuries ahead. And from the ashes, something new began. The chaos and upheaval cleared space for fresh ideas. Art, science, and culture flourished. The Renaissance, one of history's greatest periods of creativity, rose from the shadow of the plague. The Black Death was more than just a disease. It was a turning point. It destroyed millions of lives, but it also reshaped Europe forever. It ended the medieval world and opened the door to the modern age. This shift started to break down the rigid feudal system. Landowners, once in total control, had to compete for workers. Wealth began to move from the elite to the common people, setting the stage for a more mobile society. Before the plague, medicine was based mostly on superstition. But the sheer scale of the crisis forced some thinkers to search for more rational scientific explanations. This curiosity and experimentation laid the foundation for the Renaissance and later the scientific revolution. Out of the ashes of tragedy came the spark of modern science. The Black Death also changed how people saw life itself. With death so close, many embraced the idea of living fully. Memento mori, remember you will die, became a theme in art and literature. Cities rebuilt with better planning and sanitation, slowly improving public health for future generations. The plague spread along trade routes from Asia to Europe, showing just how connected the medieval world already was. Afterward, trade shifted, populations changed, and new opportunities arose, reshaping global networks. The Black Death was one of humanity's darkest chapters, but it also forced change. It ended the old world of rigid feudalism, gave rise to new ideas, and pushed Europe toward modernity. It's a powerful reminder that even in our deepest crises, the seeds of transformation are planted. And maybe that's the biggest lesson it left behind. That even in humanity's darkest hours, change, renewal, and resilience always follow. If you want more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world, hit subscribe and join me for the next one.